Hello and welcome back to Felony Miami. I'm your host, Joe Stone. And on today's program, we have three guests. Once again, we have Dr. B, Dr. Bernard Ashby, cardiologist of Columbia University professor, hip-hop entrepreneur with FDF Global, and record label tech startup that invests in local talent. And they also have a professional recording studio over there in Wynwood. And you're helping out a lot of youngsters from the projects with their legal problems as well. Thank you. Welcome to the program.
Pleasure to be here.
All right. Also, we have Denise Georges, former state assistant attorney for Miami-Dade County from 2008 to 2016. Ms. Georges developed a valuable skill set in victim advocacy and tried over 40 jury trials all the way to verdict, and also was involved in over 50 bench trials. In addition, as a felony division chief, Ms. Georges tried a multitude of cases, including murder and DUI manslaughter. That's heavy stuff. In April 2016, Ms. Georges joined the law firm of Colson, Hicks, Edson, where she represents clients who have been catastrophically injured as a result of medical negligence. Welcome to the program.
Honored to be here.
Thank you so much.
And Denise is also affiliated with FDF. She
all
actually
right.
did some pro bono work for some of our artists, and her expertise went a long way in giving them a fair shot.
Awesome. We appreciate that. The community appreciates that. Mm-hmm. And we also have Mr. Leroy Jones, who is the founder of N.A.N.A, the Neighbors and Neighbors Association, a coalition of business to strengthen the black community politically and economically, which since 1995 has recruited, trained, and placed residents into current jobs. He's also part of the Circle of Brotherhood, community organizers that assist and help people in the community to create a better life for themselves. So on today's program, we're going to talk about a couple of things. Last show, we talked about felony disenfranchisement. And one of the things that we were missing was somebody that had gone through the process of being convicted of a felony and getting their rights restored. And we're very fortunate today because Mr. Leroy Jones went through this process of getting his rights restored, and we are eager to hear you tell us how you did it.
Wow. So after 18 years of trying to get my rights restored, I was successful in getting a hearing in front of the governor and the cabinet that listen to people that are trying to get their civil liberties restored and clemency. Just a few months ago, I went to Tallahassee and was granted my hearing. I'll tell you this, the paperwork to apply to get it, to have them consider it, wasn't difficult at all. I was able to do it myself. But the process to get there was, took a lot of time, back and forth. So they assign you this investigator that go back to even if you sped on the sidewalk, they know. So everything I've done, from every parking ticket, every time I was arrested, all of that. Even back into juvenile stages. And they call you and they do this 2-hour interview where they ask you a lot of questions. So a lot of it is them asking you the same questions over and over to see if you're going to say something different. That's the way I felt. Mm-hmm. When you get the letter saying that you're going through the process, there's some questions on there. I think, well, it bothered me because it didn't have anything to do with your rights being restored. I'll give you an example. It was a question there about having HIV. And I didn't understand why, what that would do to someone that had HIV or had AIDS. Would that discourage them for going through the process? Well, I went through the process, filled out the paperwork, maybe a year back and forth, answering questions, getting additional information, them wanting to know things that I own, things I was doing. It was enough to make the average person say, it ain't worth it. But to me, based on all the things I've done since my last incarceration, I was determined to see it through the end. I feel strongly that all the things I've done warrant me the opportunity to vote. What's so funny though, 2 weeks before Obama first election, I got a voter's registration card to vote. I went and voted. 2 weeks after I voted, I got a letter from the elections department saying, you did not have the right to vote. I said, well, y'all sent me a voter's card.
Right.
True story. So I gets to the clemency hearing, and at the clemency hearing, it's an open forum. So it's not like they see each individual in a room, ask questions. Everybody that comes for the hearing on that day, it's my understanding they have about 4 or 5 clemency hearings a year.
How many people were in the room?
It was maybe 100 and some odd people
Trying to get their rights
trying to
back.
get either their rights back or get pardoned. Yeah.
Oh, so people that are currently serving time trying to get pardoned, or people that
Not
probation?
serving. People they're not serving time. I think it's called pardon.
Well, it's likely that they've already been
They already did convicted
of
of time. And they trying to get it wiped off totally.
Oh, like
So-
sealed or
No pardon.
No, just pardoned, so
Yeah,
that
pardoned.
no
the-
pardon.
your
Yeah.
entire conviction would just be
Right,
vacated.
be vacated.
Oh, okay.
Right.
So so there's a difference between pardoned and clemency?
Yeah, it's a difference between giving your rights, having your rights restored, being pardoned, and to carry a concealed weapon. So all 3 of those was being heard at
On the same day
time.
with
Yeah,
150
same day.
people in the room.
About 140.
And does
Yeah,
each
something like
person get up and tell their story? Or?
that. So the way they go is you have to be there at a certain time. I think it starts at 12 o'clock. Now, I want to tell you, they started on time. And so it's the governor, it's the
The actual
Inspector
governor
Attorney General, the governor himself.
Yeah.
there at the
Yeah.
hearing?
mhm.
Oh wow.
So it's 3 people that serve on the board. And
Because correct me if I'm wrong, but in this state, the governor cannot pardon on his own, right? It takes he
he
takes
can't
a
do it on
committee.
his own. It
Yeah.
takes a committee to do it. And they try to get all 4 of the committee members to approve it, but of course 3 can do it. So I think I'm like number 80 something. And so I get to hear every case before me. And what they do is they do their review, and let me tell you, they was organized. So you can, as the people was called up, it was certain convictions that they was talking about.
Uh-huh.
And I'm sure it's the convictions that they thought would not warrant you to get in your rights restored or being able to carry a firearm or get pardoned. And so listening to it, the first case was pretty long because I guess everybody trying to get into the field of it, the cabinet trying to get in the field of it. Mm-hmm. But I can honestly say this. On my way driving up, I decided to drive because I wanted to think about the things that I thought that they would talk to me about to try to keep me from getting my rights restored. And it was a totally different thing than what I expected.
Isn't it always the conversation in your head is one thing, and then reality is
So-
that's a lot of life, isn't
So
it?
it was totally organized.
Yeah.
And from 12 to the time I left, they took 1 5-minute break.
Oh wow.
And I'm going to tell you what amazed me about the whole thing, that they allow everybody to speak as long as they want to speak.
No time limit.
I'm telling you. So at first, when they started off, they said, well, we're going to give this amount of time for you to speak, but they didn't. After the first one, they didn't do it. So it was amazing to how everybody but not only that, when they talked about your convictions that they had a problem with, they allowed you to give an explanation
Okay.
why you thought you shouldn't have been found guilty, or what was your rationale of you being put in that situation.
So let me ask you a question. So it was different than being like in a courtroom when you went to court and you were being tried for the crime, but it was kind of this interesting opportunity to be able to say, hey, here's what really happened. Because in court, you can't really do that, can you?
Right. So you wasn't being retried, but
Right.
they was asking you about the issue. Well, why did that happen, or what happened? Tell me about it. And they allowed you to speak as long as you wanted to defend yourself or defend what happened. And I didn't expect that. I really didn't.
So you hadn't prepared for those questions.
Well-
Did you have the answers for them?
Well, I prepared. I picked the questions that I knew, the convictions I had,
Yes.
that I felt in my heart they was going to bring up, and I was right. So the two that they brought up was the two that I had planned. I thought they was going to bring up. So the first one was I was arrested for an incident I had with a store owner who said that I trashed the store and threatened them. And so they arrested me. The final outcome was it wasn't none of me. So I had been in the store before that. Some people, hours later, had a problem with the same people and had an issue with them. So in the report that the police report wrote down, the police mentioned that I did say I was there and that all the witnesses say I wasn't there when that happened. So that was an issue they brought up because they said that I caused a lot of damage in the store and it was only me, and come to find out it was a bunch of people that didn't have nothing to do with me. I wasn't around, but I got arrested for it, went to court, case got thrown out, but that was one of the issues that they brought up.
So
And
they
I was
actually
able to-
questioned you about a case that
About
was
that,
thrown out,
right.
just that you were arrested on,
Right.
not convicted.
Right,
Okay.
right. But that was one of the cases they
Okay.
brought, and I knew they was going to bring it up because it was a violent crime case.
Okay,
But
sure.
I'm happy they did because it allowed me to give my side of the story of what happened.
And they were satisfied with your
And they would
explanation?
say, well, I got my
I guess they
rights
were.
restored.
That's a good point.
So what I noticed was, I'm going to give a few things. What I actually wrote a letter to the governor's office and everybody that served in the cabinet, and I told them what I thought about how the day planned out. So one of the things I do know is wrong is that it's like 800,000 people that's waiting, trying to get their rights restored in the state of Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And for them to have a hearing only 4 or 5 times a year is unfair. And based on the time period, they can only see maybe 100 or so people each one of those times. So they'll never meet the numbers that they need to meet.
Well, this last week, this is a big issue in the news right now. One of the judges ordered Governor Scott cabinet to create a system for restoring felons' voting rights. So that was just in this last week, I think.
Well, it's supposed to be on an item on the next election coming up.
Yeah, it is.
Where people
It's
can
on the
vote to
ballot.
do that.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about my second case they brought
Okay.
up. Okay. So the second case they brought up was with me and a City of Miami police officer. So I got a permit to demonstrate a construction site that was in the inner city that didn't have nobody that lived in the inner city working on that project. And my intent was to get people that live there as well to work on that project because they receive government money to do it. So fortunately or unfortunately, the sergeant who gave us the permit to be on the construction site to demonstrate. And so we get there, we got our permit to demonstrate, and the officers there, the men officers there didn't give us a hard time, but this police officer lady came and she said, no, y'all can't demonstrate. We showing her the permit, all this and that. So push come to shove, I get arrested. And so I get to the police station. Everybody know who I'm is. Of course, they don't take me off of handcuffs because they know who I'm is, and everybody know me and all that. So they take me back to the demonstration site because they realize the permit give us the right to be there. But in the police report, they wrote in the police report that I threatened the police lady and I pushed her against the police car. They didn't know someone was filming the whole thing. So 4 o'clock that night, they realized, they got word that somebody was filming it. They went to the people's house to get the recording, but the people had already gave it to me. So I didn't know they was filming it until later that afternoon. Mm-hmm. They contacted somebody that knew me, met me, gave me the recording. And so when it goes to trial, the prosecutor wants to see the videotape. And the judge said to the prosecutor, well, why you need to see the videotape? And say, well, we don't want to get shanghaied in court. We need to see what it say. Well, the judge said, well, that's a police officer. If she was telling the truth, you don't need to see what's on the tape. You can see it at trial. Why you need to see what's on the tape now? If she telling the truth about it, if he pushed her, then we'll see it if the videotape shows it.
All right. Well, I'm looking at you right now because if I was that prosecutor and there was exculpatory evidence out there in order to disprove the crime, I would want it for a multitude of reasons. We already know that our criminal justice system is overburdened and there are cases that need to go to trial. And especially in this county where you have thousands of cases in any given division and everyone wants closure to their case. So as a prosecutor, if there was exculpatory evidence, I would want to see it for two reasons. One, to dismiss the charge if that's warranted, and then number two, to bring it to internal affairs or the superiors so then they can go and investigate these police officers who may or may not have falsified a police report. Instead of trial by surprise and, one of those that like, we'll just wait until the last minute and then just surprise someone, all of it can be remedied on the front end if it's just turned over.
Okay, so I didn't ask for discovery, nor did they ask for discovery. That's the first thing. The second thing is, I get your point about what if the police falsified or said something wrong, what should have happened. But the judge said to them, are you ready to go to trial? More than once. So they kept postponing it until the judge said, no more postpone. We're going to trial this afternoon. Just get ready. They dismissed the charges. They didn't want to pursue it. So they didn't ask for discovery.
They didn't see the video, but
didn't
they
ask
ended
for
up dismissing
discovery?
the case anyway.
Right.
So you
Right.
didn't even waste another day on that, because I get what you're saying, that why carry on when there's so many people backed up in a line? Why would you waste any time?
Anyone's
Yeah,
time.
exactly.
Florida is one of 2 states in the United States that allows discovery in criminal cases. So
What's the other state? I'm sorry.
I
Put you on the
believe it's
spot.
Nevada.
Okay.
And I may be wrong about that, but that's why it takes on average about 2 to 3 years for an actual case to go to trial. On homicides, you're talking anywhere between 5 to 7 years. Wow. And it really depends on the judges. But at the end of the day, they don't want to push a case to trial and it just be reversed for a defendant's failure to actually investigate their case.
Interesting.
So that is the difference between Florida and everywhere else. And plus, we live in the sunshine. So everything that police do, all of the reports, as long as it's not a pending investigation, you can merely just send an email or a written request to the entity and everything is an open book.
Really? That's fascinating. I didn't know that Florida had this rule, one of the only 2 states that could do discovery. And can you just tell us real quick what discovery is, since you both brought it up?
So discovery is where defendants are entitled to take depositions of all listed witnesses. They have an opportunity to review all of the evidence that has been impounded in the matter. They're also entitled to do any independent testing, if it's DNA or fingerprint evidence, and have an independent expert review it. So this all takes time. And in order for a prosecution to call a witness, they have to list everyone who may have some knowledge. So it can be anywhere from 10 witnesses on a simple case, or on a complicated homicide, it can be 200 witnesses. In federal court, you're limited to 10 depositions per side in civil cases. Whereas in state criminal cases, a defense attorney can take 100 depositions if they so please.
So I didn't have to request discovery because I had the tape, and the tape proved what happened. So when you look at the tape, the police officer confronted me, and she pushed me against the car. So everything that they said in the report was not accurate.
I guess the point like that where we want to get at is that how long of a process it was for you to actually get your voters' rights back in our current
years.
system.
18 years.
18 years.
And basically the question is, why do we even have that? Like why do we as a state take the rights of ex-felons, the right to vote away from ex-felons?
So
And is that serving any purpose other than disenfranchisement of an entire group of people?
that could be the only case, because there's some states that is supposed to be more biased or racist than Florida that allow people to get their rights restored as soon as they come off of restitution or serve their
Probation,
time or
yeah.
probation.
Yeah.
You know, the state of Florida don't
Yeah.
do
Well,
that.
I think Florida's on the right track, and again, Florida's one of only 4 states in the United States that still does disenfranchise felons. But I think it's going to change. I mean, I'm hopeful.
Yeah.
I think it's going to change because I think
This is on the ballot come
It's on the ballot come
November.
November. So make sure you get out there and vote.
Yeah.
It's super important. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to have a conversation because I'm very interested in kind of explaining this system and how this criminal justice system here in Miami works. And Denise, you have a very unique perspective on this, working in the prosecutor's office for so long. Bernard, so do you, and helping a lot of these young men that go through this process. And it seems that a felony conviction is in a lot of ways a life sentence because up until now, and maybe when the rules change after November, housing is a difficult thing to acquire. Loans, education, these things, it's a huge stigma.
Yeah.
If you have to fill out that you're
It's
a
like a
felon,
class
on a
citizen,
piece-
yeah.
you become a citizen. And it seems that they're being handed out so quickly. And Denise, I'm curious from your perspective, working in the prosecution office, did you see a lot of like bullshit felonies being handed out, or?
I'm going to qualify your term bullshit. Clearly, you have differing levels of felonies. So,
Right.
you have a simple cocaine possession that is a felony in the 3rd degree. And then you have burglaries that are felonies in the 2nd degree. Then you have sexual batteries that are felonies in the 1st degree. So you definitely have different levels. But let me give you an example that driving while license suspended, if you have 3 or more convictions of a misdemeanor, the next time you are caught driving with a suspended license, you are now a habitual traffic offender, which carries a maximum of 5 years in prison. And this is a mere traffic offense. And here in Miami, just based on the population, the number of cases, I would say that our prosecutor's office reviews every case and has a lot more discretion than other counties. A driving while license suspended here is credit for time served. You go up to Broward County, there's a good chance that you're going to be doing a year and a day in prison.
Now, explain that year and a day thing, because I've heard that said before. There's a differentiation between 365 days and 366 days.
So clearly we have 365 days in the year.
Yes.
However, you can never sentence anyone to an actual year. You either have to sentence them to 364 days and they stay local. However, depending on the severity of the case, if you get 366, that means a prison number. And it doesn't matter if you have served all of your time here locally. For sentencing purposes, you have gone to prison. They will fax over, you will get a DC number from the Department of Corrections, and then the next time that you're picked up, there is a very good chance that that is going to trigger other classifications, which are regulated by our career criminal statutes. And I had years of experience in that specialized units. And I mainly dealt with armed robbers who had been released from prison after doing significant bids. And then within a close amount of time, it's generally 3 years, you are now considered a prison releasee reoffender if you have now committed a violent offense. And if it's a robbery, the mandatory minimum is life in prison. So that is the difference between a Dade County jail and an actual prison term.
So the difference is, it's a lot of people that end up going to jail or going to prison because they can't pay for an attorney. And they end up with a public defender that got 1,000 cases, that can't do the research, that can't do the legwork, and they end up taking plea bargains. It's a lot of people in jail and prison ain't done nothing. But because they don't have the resources, they have someone telling them, look, either take this year and a day, or if you found guilty, you're going to get 30 years or life. And what you think they're going to do?
Well, yeah, we've heard this story over and over. The people that get the offer to sign, we had a show with Gloria Taylor. 2 ounces of cocaine, she's doing life in prison.
And think about my 2 cases, what I just talked to you all about. Wasn't convicted of neither one of them, but that was the conversation at the governor's office, at the clemency hearing.
Yeah.
Neither one was I convicted of.
But then the question is, well, what do you do? Do you try every single case? It's not possible.
It's not possible.
So on any given Monday, if you walk into one of the felony divisions downtown Miami, I mean, you may have 100 cases that are on the docket, and they can range anywhere from a simple coke possession to a homicide. You know, clearly the more severe crimes, those are the ones that are going to trial because you're looking at life in prison. But, you know, there has to be some type of punitive punishment, because that's what it is, for a crime that's committed. And I'm not disregarding the fact that there are many innocent people who walk into court on a Monday morning. But from a judicial standpoint, what do you do?
What you do, use some common sense. And I always get back to the actual crux of what we're doing here. What are we doing? Like, are we trying to make society better, right? And you look at our criminal justice system, you talked in some very detailed language about the guts of it. But again, what are you doing here in terms of making the community safer? Are you making people's lives better, or are you making them worse? And I think in a lot of ways, the system as it's constructed, our current laws that are on the books, actually make life worse for individuals. They don't decrease crime, they don't decrease drug use, they don't improve mortality. They don't do any of those things, except you have this big complicated mass of criminal justice system where everybody works and everybody knows the lingo, but at the end of the day, the outcomes are shitty, meaning that you're not actually improving people's lives, but you have people who are working and engaging in the system, and a lot of people are doing important things, but at the end of the day, it's not really accomplishing its goal, which again is to actually help society. And that's really what I always want to get to the crux of, because a lot of times we get so caught up in the weeds that we forget that the criminal justice system is supposed to serve a purpose, which it does not.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's crime out there. We see it. You've seen plenty of it, I'm sure, Denise. But what I'm curious to know is, when the prosecutor's office walks in on any given Monday and they see the 100 cases from over the weekend, how do you guys process and collate that? And like Bernard was saying, do you just say, okay, well, look, these 25 cases, go make a plea deal. These have to go to trial. These have to go. How do you break that down? And where do you actually get the offer? Do you just pull the offer out of your hat? Is there a chart? How do you say, okay, look, you take a year for this, and you over here, you take 5 years for this, and you can go home? I mean, is it based on if they have a good lawyer? Is it based on the color of their skin? Is it based on their economic level? Is it based on, because
you're limited? I mean, look what you have to work with.
I mean, there is no formula. It's not like you just, punch a bunch of things into the calculator and then it regurgitates what type of a range. So anytime that anyone is arrested in the state of Florida, they go through an arraignment process. First, they go to bond hearings where a judge has to review if there's probable cause. And then from there, there's generally a 21 to 30-day window.
Okay, now, arraignment. What is the actual, I've heard that word before.
Not telling the truth and are a lot less credible than what you would want them to be.
Okay. Have you ever experienced any corruption there?
Growing up in Overtown, in public housing, in Largemont projects, we witnessed people become police officers in the city of Miami that wasn't from this country. We don't know what kind of background they had. We don't know what they did in their country, but because they didn't have a history here, they was able to get on the police force. And in the 70s and the 80s is when the mass of drugs came into the inner city by people of authority that was not of this country, that got on the police force and wreaked havoc in some of these neighborhoods. But I don't want to shy away from that. I mean, a lot of damage has been done. Look, in my case, what I talked about, what happened with the police officer with the video. Okay, videotape. That wasn't corruption where they allegedly plotted a statement on. And by the way, when you get a arrest report, in most cases you can't read it because it don't bleed through the other page. So the judge get to see it and the prosecutor get to see it, and in its form. But that person that got arrested, that taken it in jail, they can't read it because when they print it, it don't bleed through. So you don't know what you're being charged with other than what they said because you can't read what the statement was saying.
I'm sure somewhere along the line you could get a clear copy.
Yeah, but still, you should.
I'm sure when you're in it, it's so different because just like anything, hindsight is 20/20 vision. When you're living in the real moment in real time, it's a different world.
But who's going to ask for it? You're going to ask for it while you're sitting in jail. You already, in some cases, feeling intimidated. And by the way, I think lawyers do get a better opportunity in the court than public defenders because, look, you can go to any courthouse, and when court starts, who cases are heard first? The paid lawyers. They get a chance to go right in front of the judge while the public defenders have to wait. Right?
They do.
And get
I
their
agree
cases
with you.
heard.
Okay.
So having money obviously play some.
Well, they also
Better
have to be in
advantage.
multiple courtrooms, so it's just a matter of course that, the PD is assigned to a certain division, so they're going to be there all day, and the private attorney comes in, get their cases heard, they hop to another courtroom, and they continue on throughout the morning, or the PD can be there till 2, 3 in the afternoon because they got nowhere else to be other than assigned to that judge, and it's a grind 'em game.
Right. So it's just a matter of just business courtesy.
It is.
Yeah.
So
Scheduling. Yeah.
yeah, so my answer to that question is I've never dealt with the criminal justice system at the level of either one of you. So basically, but I've dealt with them on behalf of my family, friends, and now our artists and my mentees. And what I've noticed is that the system is holding them back. And so right now we have them in a great program at FDF where we're actually moving them along the way in terms of improving their lives through all facets, education, economics, and actually jobs now. And because of their issues with the cops, they keep getting caught up into the system. And a lot of times the cops are doing their job, right? And they're dealing with a lot of gun violence and murders in the neighborhood. And so they're targeting certain people to decrease what's going on, which is the active murders. But at the same time, they're hurting them. They're actually hurting what we're doing, and in terms of trying to improve their lives and improve their economic circumstances. They're worsening it and decreasing opportunities, and a lot of times not on purpose, but sometimes on purpose. And so, if from the perspective of our artists, the question is whether or not there's corrupt behavior. Yes, from their perspective, yes. But from the perspective of that cop, seeing what they're seeing in the context that they're dealing with these issues, they may actually be doing a good thing. So at the end of the day, you're dealing with a system that incentivizes these kind of interactions, and where a community hates the cops because they're always fucking with them, right? And where cops actually, have a bad taste in their mouth from the interaction they have with the community, and it's this negative feedback loop. And at the end of the day, we have to look at what we're doing because it's really making things worse. In a lot of ways, and it's making the job of the cops a lot more difficult because
they can't relate to the people.
They don't relate to the people
You're talking about
in a lot of ways.
20, 30 years old, never been in the inner city, now given a responsibility
Policing,
to tote a gun and going into public housing.
Yeah.
That don't know the people, don't relate, can't relate to the people.
And there's a real fear there, and
Yeah.
we don't want to get off the topic too much.
It is
There's
a real
recent murder.
There is a real fear,
of a
and
guy
I'm sure
with
the
cell
fear
phone.
is on both sides.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
it's a system. It's really a system.
It is a system. Listen, and if anybody out there wants to make a change, the way that you got to make a change is you got to get involved. That's why we do this program. That's why Felony Miami exists, so we can help to facilitate a change, so we can help bring ideas, thoughts, conversation, and maybe some kind of a technique to making a change. Because these changes only happen one way, and that's by the community, society, the people that live here saying, that's not cool, we need to change that. So Voting is important. Educating yourself on what's going on in your community is important. And getting involved is important because we all live here together. No matter what color, we all live here together.
You know, I think the important, when we talked about me getting my rights restored, I think the most important thing that I took out of that is I imagine how many people that want to get their rights restored that cannot make that trip to Tallahassee because of whatever reason. Because either they're afraid or don't have the income to go to Tallahassee to be heard.
Un-American.
I know, and that's right. It should be.
There should be satellites, of course, yeah.
You know, and I knew based on being there all day, if you brought someone with you, if you got there, you had a better chance.
Yeah.
If you brought someone to speak on your behalf, you had a better chance. If you show that you were doing positive things since your last incarceration or release from supervision, you had a better chance.
And the fact that you have to do that is stupid.
Yeah.
Right? It's stupid, right? That's un-American. You're a citizen of the United States, and you should have the right to vote.
And hopefully that's going to change come November.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so get out there and
Ridiculous.
vote because
I can't
when
vote
somebody
this time.
does, when somebody
Amen
pays
to
for
that.
their, somebody pays their debt, they should be paid up.
Yeah.
In the next case. Okay, so we're going to wrap up this episode. Final question is a music question because that's one of the things that we do here. Okay, so music, recording artist, or song that changed your life.
That's a tough question.
Or impacted your life.
Impacted your life. Change could just be like, I was happy, I heard this song, I got sad. That's a change.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be a radical change. It could be like, I was super sad, I heard this song, and now I'm happy.
Yeah.
Because I always say music is like a time machine, right? We don't need to invent a time machine that already exists. It's called music.
Yep.
See, I don't know if I can point to one song. I can say that for myself, music has an ability to throw me back to 20 to 25 years where I know what breakup I was going through, what was going on in my home life,
Right on.
what car I was driving, what street I was driving. It's like TLC No Scrubs comes on, and I remember like cruising around. It's like windows down, and you feel right back in that moment. And
It's
I
amazing,
think
right?
that's the power of music, and it's just it'll live through you for as long as you're on this earth.
Yeah. TLC. There it
TLC.
is. All right, Leroy.
I'm unsure. So, I do know personally, I like Tupac music. I
Yeah.
do like that. I like how intelligent I think he was, the way he articulated himself about
Tupac.
change for poor people. I liked that.
Nice.
But I like a genre of music, man. You know, I like the Rolling Stones. You know, I like Cyndi Lauper. You know,
Yeah.
I like Duran.
All good
Believe
artists.
it or not.
All good stuff.
Definitely.
So it's you know.
Shout out to the 80s.
I like that stuff, you know?
Right on.
Oh, I have to answer the
Dr. B,
question?
yeah, you got to answer the
Oh,
question, of
man.
course.
Well, a lot of music impacted me in various ways, alluding to what Denise mentioned earlier. But what comes to mind now is probably listening to N.W.A. as a kid. When my brother was bumping them real hard, he was bumping them, DJ Quick and that stuff in his car, and that music was just for me just opened my eyes and it made me look at things differently, but also enjoy like the whole genre of hip hop. And I started like quoting the lyrics and just indulging in the music, and that led me down a path to looking at other hip hop, and I ended up in the New York hip hop and Wu-Tang Clan and all other genres. And for me, it was kind of the gateway to hip hop as an expression of my youth. And so I guess N.W.A. would be somebody that kind of put me on that path, or impacted my life in a major way.
Well, there you have it. All right. I want to